Hi everybody. Today I wanted to talk about paid links, and specifically, what are the web spam team's criteria for paid links? Now, this is kind of interesting because the vast majority of the time, things are incredibly clear. People are paying money outright for links based on PageRank, flowing the PageRank, trying to get higher rankings. So here's an example spam email that I got. We are offering our high-quality, genuine PR5-9 sites for selling text links. We maintain these quality with our sites, and they talk about unique content with maximum of 5 outbound links. They're selling these, no fake PR, no drop domains, that sort of thing. So 99.9% of the time, it's abundantly clear that these are links that are being bought and paid and sold and all that sort of stuff. But every so often, people like to split hairs, and they'll ask questions like, okay, Matt, but what about if I, don't give the guy money, but maybe I buy him some beer and a pizza, and then he happens to write about my site, those sorts of things. So I wanted to walk through sort of the criteria that we use when we assess whether a link would be paid or not. And the main thing that I want to say up front is these are some of the criteria, but just like the web spam guidelines basically say, look, anything that's deceptive or manipulative or abusive, we reserve the right to take action on. It's the same sort of thing. If we see a new technique that people are trying to exploit people's trust or something like that, we're willing to take action on that as well. But if you look at it in a pretty clear lens, you can see that people like the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, have actually defined what does it mean to have a material connection, if you are compensated. And so if I don't cover the criteria or the examples that you'd be interested in, I would actually encourage you to check out the FTC's guidelines on that or there's similar guidelines from other governmental agencies, because we actually hew pretty closely to the spirit behind those. So first off, what is the value of what you're getting? Even Google's Code of Conduct recognizes that if you get a $1 pen or something like that, that might not change your behavior. And so, if you go to a conference and you pick up a free t-shirt that's probably pretty low quality, that's probably not going to change how you behave, right? That's not going to change your behavior. On the other hand, if someone pays you outright $600 to link to you, that is clearly a lot of value. And so on the spectrum between a pen and a t-shirt all the way up to something of great value, that's one of the criteria that we use. Another good one is how close is something to money. So again, the vast majority of the time people are actually giving you money. Sometimes people might say something like, hey, I'd like to send you a gift card. Well, gift cards are pretty fungible. You can convert those to money and back and forth not too easily. On the other hand, something like, I'm going to give you a free trial of perfume, or I'm going to, buy you a beer or something like that, that's less of a connection. But we do look at how close something is to actual money whenever we're looking at those kinds of things. If somebody goes and buys you a dinner and then you write a blog post, 4 months later, and the dinner wasn't some huge steak dinner that with 18 courses or something like that, that's probably not the sort of thing that we would worry about, as you would guess. Another criterion that we use is whether something is a gift or a loan. So imagine, for example, that somebody loaned out a car for someone to try out for a week. Versus giving them a car. There's a big difference there, because if you're loaned a car for a week, you still have to maintain the insurance on your car, you still have to make sure you've got a place to store it, whereas if someone gives you a new car, that is something of a completely different nature. And so if somebody is giving you a review copy and you have to return it, that's a relatively well-respected thing where people understand, okay, I'm trying this out, I'm a gadget reviewer or whatever, I get to see whether I like this camera or whatever, but I do have to send it back. Whereas if someone sends you a camera and then says, oh, you know what, just keep it, that's going to be something that's much closer to material compensation, in our opinion. We also look at the intended audience, and it can be hard to judge intent, but bear in mind that the vast majority of the time the intent is crystal clear when someone's giving you actual money to buy links. But take, for example, suppose someone went to a Salesforce conference, so they're at Dreamforce, and they represent a nonprofit. And so they managed to say, okay, I'm a nonprofit, I'd like to try out your service. And so at Salesforce conference or Dreamforce, they got a year's free use of the service. Now, the intent there was not to get someone to embed paid links within an editorial blog post. The intent was to try to sign somebody up, see how they liked it. They can be someone who can tell other people about it. Maybe it's a subscription or a trial where they get 6 months free, and then after that they have to either convert or start paying money or something along those lines. That is something where the intent is not trying to get links for SEO value, it's so that people can try it out. Similar sort of thing if you go to a conference, right, and it's intended for programmers like Google I/O, and you're giving them a Nexus 7 or something like that because you want them to write more Google apps for tablets or something along those sorts of lines. The difference would be, we have encountered, people who would say, who are supposed to be reporters, who would say, if you give us a laptop, then we will write a nice story about you. And it's giving me a laptop, not, borrowing a laptop. I've certainly dealt with a few consultants who said something like, if you make sure that I get a really nice monitor, I'll make sure that your report from this consultancy looks really good. And that's not the sort of thing that we do, and it's not the sort of thing that we would want to, you would want that to be disclosed. So another thing to consider is whether it would be a surprise. So if you're a movie reviewer, it's not a surprise that somebody probably lets you into the theater and maybe you watch the movie for free. That's not something that's going to be a surprise. If it was a reporter for a tech blog and they said, give me a laptop and I get to keep it, that would be a surprise. And it was something that was not reviewing the laptop. It was just like, I'll write about your startup if you give me a laptop. That would be the sort of thing that really should be disclosed. So when you're looking at the criteria, first off, it's how close is it to money and how valuable is it? Because it's normally money and it's normally the amount of money they're paying to get links. We look at whether it's a gift, whether it's a loan, the intended audience, if somebody's trying to get you to try out the product versus trying to get you to write about it, sponsored blog posts, and we'll give you a little bit of free merchandise, but we really want you to write about it, those sorts of things. And then criteria like, would it be a surprise? Would people expect that as you're writing a review or you're trying out some product, or is it something that's completely off topic that is really not germane to writing about in a particular blog post or something like that? So that gives you a little bit of the idea of the sorts of things that we look at. Again, most of the time it's really clear because money is changing hands, but in general, those are the sorts of things that we look at. If you have more questions, I'd encourage you to check out the FTC's guidelines. They've got a lot of different examples, and most of the stuff that we view falls right down the same principles as the FTC. Hope that helps.